welcome back to Sinews of War. In the previous episode, we ended our fairly successful war with Spain because we now had new priorities, especially after France declared war, and piling on top of that was Genoa, although they didn't present that much of a threat, so nothing to worry about there. Nassau, now with nothing to do in America, started getting ready for an attack on France's protectorate Louisiana, but had to wait for Callumber to show up to provide naval support. Voss took a really battered army to try and punish Genoa for declaring war on us, and in a slightly iffy battle where we had a tiny line, we actually managed to completely flatten the Genoese troops, so now their nation is really on the edge of destruction. The Barbary states, with whom we've been at war for the whole campaign, made a series of disastrous naval attacks against Marseille, and we managed to get peace with them as a result. And finally, France, being slow to mobilise and attacked by Westphalia several times, was steamrolled by the emergency army raised to fight them. They did, though, bring in a new stack from the Americas with tons of native troops, so that was risky, but we made one attack on Alsace-Lorraine, their last European province. If we can assault their fortifications and win, that main force will be destroyed. That summer was my most memorable meeting with him. Lodewijk had sailed to Curaçao without warning, finding me in the midst of troop drills on the beach below the fort. He strode up with his unmistakable pounding gait and handed to me a letter bearing his own seal. He forced me to open it before we spoke. It was the order to attack the Windward Islands, then held by the French. The details were sparse, and I was left wondering whether this venture was on account of some sanctified diplomacy from Europe or the personal whims of Lodewijk himself. In fact, I had a rather dark idea that this might be a form of suicide mission in response to our fierce argument of the previous year, in which I had insisted the native soldiers be given uniforms in a heated exchange before the whole board of directors. But the gathering of privateers and the lively distribution of letters of marque informed me that a state of war was the reason for it all, so my suspicions dropped. I inform you, dear reader, of all this, for I am still, somewhere deeply hidden in my mind, afraid of what Lodewijk will do to the Americas. I wish it to be known that I, the man who handed him the power he has yet to use for good nor evil, was not complicit in any future atrocities he may, by the time of your reading, be responsible for. I cared for my men, and I cared for the company. That is the brief memoriam I would have known. And I say there is honour in those acts, no matter the course it set the world upon. Here we are at the artillery fort outside Alsace-Lorraine, where this hastily mustered army with no general is going to head into an assault on those walls because we need to take this settlement right now to wipe the French administration out. As these men approach, they're going to be taking light artillery fire from the fort's guns. We're attacking on the west and north side with two lines of line infantry, both of them going to be subject to attack. The enemy have the walls totally lined with troops, and on the inside they have mortars, so as we get close we are going to take even more artillery fire. The enemy's numbers are great in comparison to ours, so they've got the walls totally packed with troops, and those troops are manning the light guns to keep pounding our men as they approach, which is not going to be too helpful for us, but they tend to be inaccurate, so I'm only expecting light damage, so I'm only advancing at a walk right now. Here on the side of my army, I've got two squads of militia. This is Voss's demons and the other one is Voss's devils. These are the two squads of militia who successfully fought that battle near Brussels, so he fought the Spanish. And I've decided to make these into Voss's little henchmen, his little personally trained men who are going to, right now in this battle, make a surprise attack on the back of the fort once the main army is engaged to try and get in and do some damage. So my men break into a run as they get closer, and the intensity of the artillery fire increases as the enemy's artillery on the wall becomes more accurate and the mortars start to pound these units. So they're going to be taking losses and losing morale as they advance, and of course losing stamina, but we need to get in as fast as possible. As we get near the wall, this is the most dangerous part of the battle. We're sitting within musketry range of the troops on the wall, but really luckily for me, and this is probably critical to this battle, most of these troops were reforming as I stopped to start setting up the ropes to do the climb. So my stationary units just standing out in the open there don't get completely annihilated by musket fire, which usually causes them to rout, which is the real power of artillery forts. They have to wait for the men sent forward to deploy the ropes to actually do it. Now the enemy decided to react to my deployment of ropes, interestingly sending a couple of units actually out of the artillery fort to come and attack these units on the ground before they climbed. Now that has the potential to be very disruptive, but actually they sort of stopped halfway out, but they are eventually going to continue out with more units and start fighting in melee out there. Meanwhile, across the rest of the wall, my units are going to start the deadly climb, queuing not in a particularly physically accurate looking way. It's because the unit scale is higher than it's meant to be for a DarthMod. So anyway, as the troops reach the top, they're now going to be in a deadly melee where they have to try and kill enemies to buy time for more of their own troops to get up to support them. The enemy, of course, absolutely swamping my attack with troops. They have so many men up here because those citizen militia have 500 men in each company and they can just really swarm all over the place. My men are going to have a hard time, but they do have bayonets, giving them an advantage in melee, so although we don't have numerical advantage, we are going to kill more than we lose in theory. So to start with, it's just a brawl, hard to even tell what's going on. My men climbing into the melee and just fighting for their lives as the enemy attempt to react, and overall, it's not really tactical. You just have to see what you can do. Once you've deployed them onto the wall, you can't really stop the climb, so they're going to have to just keep doing it. The cavalry, of which I brought quite a lot to this battle, actually did find something to do in that they could come and attack the enemy units who'd come out of the fort. I've got probably 7 companies of cavalry in this army, really unsuitable for a siege battle, but since the enemy have come out, that's actually going to help by letting me use those cavalry to do something. And here you can see the enemy have really disrupted my climbing of the ropes by attacking the unit at the base, meaning only a few of that unit has actually gone up, and they're probably wondering where the rest of their reinforcements are. Luckily, their commander here at the front is absolutely hacking through the French line infantry with no mercy, so it's just him and a small team basically fighting off the entire garrison on the wall here. They're having no mercy, so hopefully they can continue to hold out even without reinforcements, and my cavalry can resolve the situation down on the ground. So as that melee continues, we get a message that a building has been captured. It's referring to the gates, because Voss's militia have now successfully scaled the walls and have captured the southern gates of the fort, and that means I can now mobilize my cavalry. We can open up those gates and get cavalry inside the fort. The main thing they'll be doing is attacking the enemy's artillery, but any units that come down off the walls will then be subject to attack as well. And while we wait for that, we just inspect the melee and see that actually here on the western wall, it looks like the French are winning. There really aren't many Dutch troops left up there. The French have just swamped everything. Further up, Dutch troops are forming up, having defeated a unit of citizen militia, or having almost defeated it by the looks of things, but there's more reinforcements close by. The French totally swarming the northwest corner and the northern parts of the wall. Overall, it's a bit hit and miss as to how this assault is going right now.
Bastards don't have a clue. Let's end this mess. Reuter, take 2 platoons down the wall and support the attack. Go! Nielsen, pick 5 men and get those bloody gates open. I want our horses inside the fort before those damned mortars reload. The rest of you, follow me down. We're gonna clear out those barracks, then get our asses over to the northern ramparts. Our boys are knocking on the doors over there and the frogs won't let them in. Time to punish them for their bad manners. Fasten the locks on those things. Just as likely to shoot our own men as theirs now. Do it the medieval way like we've been practicing, eh? Jab, twist, recover. 3 steps to a dead bloody Frenchman. Well, don't wait for me to blow a bloody horn. Get in there.
Now that my cavalry are inside the fort, the enemy's artillery crew are in massive trouble, coming in with tons of cavalry to wipe them out. And handily for me, the enemy commander was amongst the artillery crew, so we kill him in that melee, so that might prompt some of the enemies to rout a little faster than usual. So on the wall, as I implied, it's kind of just going back and forth. The enemy still having lots of forces, us having more and more forces coming up the wall. Both sides taking enormous losses in a fight that doesn't really seem to be going anywhere. We do have advantages where we're fighting citizen militia, because our men are going to be able to take them down en masse. So here we're starting to get a foothold on the wall, and a little bit further on, crushing that unit of citizen militia from an attack with from two sides there. The enemy citizen militia with no bayonets and poor melee skills going to really struggle. Further along, the enemy's regular troops having an easier time, still pretty good in melee even without the bayonets. And here on the corner, just a massive horde of troops. Basically, we've got the enemy surrounded. We're attacking the enemy from three sides, but they still have the numbers advantage on us. So our men are just trying to crush the enemy here. We've got the militia in there fighting as well now, starting a new front, but it's not exactly a decisive engagement. We're not certainly winning. We are, though, winning by capturing the artillery fort, because our cavalry in the centre are unchallenged. That means we are actually getting the victory countdown now, so that's very handy. Whatever happens, if we can hold out, we can still win even with enormous losses. I need to get more cavalry inside. You can see I've got all these cav waiting to come through the north gate, but I can't capture it because the enemies are still on top of it. A few enemy troops opening the gate to have a look at my army and finding that they themselves can't defeat it single-handedly, as it turns out. My cav desperate to get inside, but even when the gates are open, they're not allowed to pass through, because technically they're not our gates. A few men get trapped on the inside when the gates close on them there, but yeah, it's a little bit of a weird situation. So you can see just the level of casualties we've taken. The floor on top of the artillery fort just covered in our bodies, where the enemy are still fighting on against us. But there are places, as you can see, where we have taken ground, in particular against citizen militia. So it's not the end of the world. The enemy controlling certain parts of the wall, us controlling other parts. But with us controlling the centre of the fort, that's what in the end is going to be decisive. Because if they can't come off the wall and attack my cavalry there in the centre, there's nothing they can do to stop themselves from losing. And as the fight goes on, they actually start to rout in the final 10 seconds of the engagement. And their troops using my own ropes to escape from the slaughter going on, as the troops who are trying to escape are just annihilated by the Dutch survivors there. So in the end, as the countdown reaches 0, that's going to be a victory. We took pretty heavy losses. We lost almost half our total troops there in that assault. The enemy, of course, lost more. They lost 3,000 men to our just under 2,000. And more importantly, of course, they have lost their last settlement. So this is going to be utterly decisive in strategic terms. You can see here in the results that loads of units getting similar numbers of losses and kills. A really attrition heavy battle, with many regiments being almost wiped out in that assault. But in the end, Alsace-Lorraine is ours, and this is going to make a massive difference right now to the situation in Europe. I'm going to look through the messages to see the one I'm looking for. It's not that one. We don't care about the workers rioting in Savoy. We care about this: nation destroyed, France. So that faction no longer exists. All of their ships all over the world will disappear. Any territories they have in America will now switch to new factions, and most importantly, their army in Europe will disband. There's a message here saying that Quebec has arisen. This is one of the new territories that is going to appear to fill the space where France once was. I was looking around for others and noticed that, strangely, Austria seems to own this Native American tribe. I think they've been doing some cheeky land purchases there. So other French lands have just become rebel territories who we are by default at war with, so potentially we could go and invade them, but a little bit out of the way for us right now. But the real important part is that main force, and there we go, confirmation. It is not there. We have saved Paris from attack by making that deadly attack on Alsace-Lorraine. So really we're going towards having a peaceful situation in Europe once again. We are, though, still at war with Genoa, and as I hit end turn, Genoa come out for another battle with Vos, and they even have an advantage in theory. Vos had to send a lot of his troops back to Savoy to try and control public order, so now the enemy think they can have another go at us, but really it's just loads of citizens, Farlock armed citizens, and we have professional troops, not very many, but enough to school these Genoese.
J'aimerais croire comme chacun d'entre vous que ceci est une farce, un mensonge, que cette lettre aurait pu très bien être forgée. Ceci n'est pas croyable de penser que notre roi se rendrait si facilement. Mais mes amis, je crains que le contenu de cette lettre dise la vérité. Les agents ont fait le rapport, et ils racontent que les Hollandais ont recruté une grande armée en quelques mois seulement, et qu'ils ont réussi à faire fuir la majorité de nos forces. À penser qu'ils ont réussi à capturer notre roi et à dissoudre la cour en si peu de temps, malheureusement ne me semble pas si improbable que ça. Et si c'est bien le cas, le devoir demande que nous devons le secourir. Ah, mais les hommes ne se battent pas pour le roi ou pour la France. Ils se battent pour l'or. Et avec la monarchie et une nobilité pratiquement inexistante telle qu'elle est, je crains que l'or deviendrait de plus en plus rare. Mes amis, je pense que notre meilleure et seule option est de dissoudre notre armée et les renvoyer chez eux. Car peu importe la crédibilité de cette lettre, la vérité, mes chers compatriotes, la vérité de cette guerre est que nous sommes totalement et véritablement perdus.
Since this battle is looking to be pretty easy, I decided not to bother going to film the replay. I'll just show the footage of me actually doing it. You can see that the enemy's army's coming in towards my position, and I've just got my cavalry way out on the edges, sneaking around behind them as they come in. They're actually marching in at a weird angle, not coming in to actually fight me in a straight line battle. I think they might have been aware of my cavalry on the flanks and were sort of walking towards them as well, but this works to my advantage because it means when the line battle starts, only one unit's actually involved, so that's going to help out. You can see my line infantry are behind trenches, so that means in ranged combat we have a further advantage on top of our stat advantage because some of the enemy's shots that would have hit will not. So they're going to line battle there with firelock armed citizenry, not going to expect much of that at all, and once everyone's locked into combat, the cavalry are going to move out. Their general was sitting quite far behind their lines, so my cavalry are going to just pop out of hiding from the trees and attack that general's bodyguard unit, easy to take down. Another unit going to come in support since the general's bodyguard is actually quite strong, while this unit of cav is going to start attacking the enemy's very exposed infantry. Here on the flank, a small unit of firelock armed citizenry is going to disappear beneath this unit of cav, the enemy's general dying at the same time, so those cav just go right through and start attacking the next unit as well. I'm going to try and get them out actually, because I didn't want them to run into a unit that's being fired upon by my men to try and avoid friendly fire. But at this stage I thought, this battle's already almost over, we might as well just clear everything up. We'll send cavalry in against all of their infantry, and send all of my infantry to just jump over the trenches and run forward towards the enemy. So as the cavalry slam into the backs of the enemy, with one unit failing to heed my orders to go and attack that other unit of citizenry there, some of them will try to escape that, run forwards, but find from the other direction Voss and his cavalry plus all of the infantry are charging in. So now the enemy are promptly surrounded. Their firelock armed citizenry are quick to rout, and you can see there my cavalry chasing them off, but their actual line infantry are more disciplined, probably to their own demise, because fighting in this situation is quite bad. Attacked on all sides by lots of superior line infantry, by cavalry, by heavy cavalry under Voss, and eventually they realise this isn't going very well and they rout as well. So that was their last unit. That was a pretty easy battle, I think you'll agree, and it ends in fact in a heroic victory. Empire is very generous with its giving out of heroic victories, but anyway, so on the battle results screen we see the enemy lost more than 10 times our losses. Our loss is negligible really, so that siege will not be broken. Genoa is in big trouble. So now, at the start of the next turn, we get a message saying there's a rebellion in Savoy. I failed to control public order, so now we're going to have to actually face an army. You can see actually there it was really close to not rebelling. It was right on the fringe. The army itself, quite strange, it has high-tech units, but not very many of them. So we're still going to have an advantage over it. Voss plus the army already inside Savoy, trying to keep control, will be enough to bring them down. First, though, we've got these 15 guys who we can't ask to surrender, so we're going to have to just kill them. And that was the last defending force of Genoa. So there we go, we've taken their settlement. Public order absolutely abysmal, but we're going to ignore that right now because there'll be a couple of turns before they rebelled, and right now we're going to focus down the rebellion in Savoy. So Voss comes back with his army, attacks this force. We have a decent advantage over them, especially with them being attacked in the rear by our reinforcements, so they just go right down in a pretty fair order to resolve. Voss getting more and more level up through all his victories there, and now he can actually go right back to Genoa to start combating public order problems. Not going to be anywhere near enough. Savoy is actually okay because of the military crackdown bonus we get from defeating those rebels, so now it won't rebel again. But Genoa's going to need a little bit more careful treatment. Finally, they're also getting the replenishment of Voss's army. It's been weak for so long. Finally have enough money to actually get it back. So I can unexempt them from tax, or exempt them from tax, sorry, and they're still on like -10. So hopefully over time, once we've repaired buildings, that will be okay again. Now here you can see I'm looking through all these messages because I was looking to see the message to tell me that Genoa as a faction had been destroyed. I was expecting them to come up and tell me that they no longer existed. But actually looking through the diplomacy screen, they still exist. exist, and inspecting very carefully, I realised it's because they have this settlement right next to it. I'd literally never actually scrolled the map down and noticed who controlled Corsica or Sardinia, so Genoa actually do have another settlement right there, so this war isn't over. I'm going to send a boat to go and check out what's going on there, and they actually have a giant army inside the settlement, and it's not even all that bad. Lots of cavalry and some exotic eastern units going on as well, some conscripts as well, nothing too good there. But actually, Corsica doesn't have a dock, and that means Genoa can't build ships, so this army literally can't leave Corsica. So they're really screwed. I thought I'll offer them peace to try and make things better for them, and they could be my protectorate. How kind of me. But it's not going to happen. They reject the protectorate deal, and I thought, well, why don't we just go in for white peace, because I don't want to just have them there as a thorn in my side. I'm probably not going to attack them, and they're not going to attack me. But yep, they throw that out the window. They want revenge, but that revenge is going to be a very long time coming because they can't get off their island. So we're just going to sit and stare at them and see if they ever change their minds. Now back in America, Nassau still waiting to make that attack on Louisiana, and Calember with our main fleet is now getting close so he can support this attack. We need him here because we know Louisiana have a fleet of their own, and as we arrive there it is, just outside their docks. It's actually a pretty good fleet, lots of fifth rates, but ours is better. Our fleet's quite big, but not very filled with good ships. We have enough fifth rates though to match there, so we're okay. And the enemy's land army, quite bad, but I'm actually not going to attack right away because I want to recruit some more Native American troops to add to Nassau's force to make it more powerful, and of course that is probably a good thing to do because we don't know what Louisiana has beyond that settlement. They do have another settlement to the north, and potentially more armies will need to face very soon. News? Please take a seat first. You'll note I'm back a day earlier than I had planned. The estate had been redecorated, flags of the United Provinces everywhere. Your brother, I am regretful to say, was clearly uncovered in his involvement with the rebellion. Myself, I took the news easy. For the whole journey there, I had privately expected it. His lands, their little blue-coated dogs inform me, will be the property of one Gerard Voss, most likely the very same Voss we identified as their commander. And I dare say there is nothing to be done about it. You and I must remain as quiet as possible. Find all the papers you can relating to the resistance and destroy them at once. No doubt they will find out we were connected and be smashing our door down soon. Back in Europe, I realised I need to underhandedly take out this Spanish priest who's spreading Catholicism in Flanders. Unfortunately, my rake was executed, presumably by my own people, as the bishop accuses him of murder, quite rightly. So, unfortunately, he's going to continue his spread of Catholicism. You can see Protestantism is spreading in Paris, but Catholicism taking hold more and more there in Brussels. So, eventually, we are going to need to stop that guy. In the next turn, a little shuffling of troops allows us to finally stabilise public order in the Savoy-Genoa combo region. They're both capitals of their factions, which means it's going to take a really long time for them to cool down, so we're going to have to wait around. Now back in America, I'm ready to make my attack against Louisiana, but you can see I'm moving Calember out because actually I spotted their fleet suddenly run away during the end turn sequence. It went off somewhere towards the northeast part of the theatre, and we don't know where, and that's pretty inconvenient. I probably should have attacked in the previous turn just because we knew where it was and could take it down right away. So now I'm not too under threat from that fleet because all of my ports are garrisoned. That means it can't do big damage. It can just take me by surprise by suddenly appearing and perhaps attacking stray ships. But right now, we're going to have to just ignore it basically and try and do the damage on the land. So I'm reinforcing Nassau with extra bowmen and some musket troops, all native troops, so that he's now got a fairly native-based force, which is going to be facing off against a fairly native-based force on the Louisiana side. So now, we are pretty much ready to declare war. I'm going to do it right now, even though I don't have the movement points to attack, because it would be nice if Louisiana actually attacked me and revealed their hand. So, we go into war, no allies getting involved or anything like that, nice and easy. And we're going to step just over the border there, just to be provocative, and see what Louisiana do, and if they don't do anything, we will advance on that settlement over which we know we have an advantage. And now, Calember can raid the Louisiana trade, which actually makes us a fair bit of cash. We're making absolutely loads, 18,000 plus per turn from all of our trade routes, raiding and tax income on our very developed provinces now. Now, speaking of development, let's have a quick look at technology. I've actually been slightly lax in researching fire by rank. I forgot to start researching it as soon as I could, so actually a couple of turns late. We're going to get it slightly later than we could have, but still most likely earlier than everyone else, because we still haven't seen another faction even have bayonets. So that's all good news. We're also going to switch over some industrial research to try and get the socket bayonet, a slightly improved version of the ring bayonet we're using now, which also unlocks the next tier of barracks. In general, with 4 colleges all working at different techs at once, we can expect to have a technological advantage in general. And speaking of tech, Austria make me this offer. They want to trade a couple of low-level farming techs for some money and a naval tech, I think there. I accept it. Austria, pretty weak right now, so I don't really care about trying to strategize not giving them techs. So as we move on, Louisiana doesn't do anything with their turn, which I found quite curious. So that either means they're quite weak or they've got something up their sleeve. In India, I decided to move Grasdak, my Protestant minister, onto the subcontinent itself. Ceylon is now really Protestant, so it's time to start converting the rest of India, an extremely slow process, but it's basically very early preparation for the fact that one day we will have to invade India because it is host to a couple of the United Provinces, victory provinces up there somewhere. So one day that'll be happening, but right now let's focus on the Louisiana War. So of course they did nothing, meaning we are just going to advance towards their settlement, which we can reach in one turn. So I'm going to move up a little closer with Nassau, still the same amount of troops there, but I spotted this really small army outside and I thought, this is great, we can attack them and draw the garrison out into a field battle rather than attacking the town. But bad news, Louisiana had a full stack concealed in the woods nearby, so now we have to fight that stack, this small army, and the garrison of the settlement all at the same time in one field battle, probably going to be crushed from multiple sides as well, given the layout here on the campaign. So Nassau now faces a pretty difficult battle, made especially difficult by the fact the enemy have lots of melee troops in their army, lots of native melee troops, and all of our natives are ranged, so if they get in close we'll be in trouble. We're going to cut it slightly short and see that next time. The Dutch administration in Europe was forced to get used to the relatively new concept of occupying lands ingrained with support for other governments. Their unsophisticated approach revealed their inexperience. Dissenters were simply killed or imprisoned, avoiding the immediate issues but preparing a boiling pot of future unrest. Ironically, the nation's emphasis on intellectual development had allowed many of the common people to get access to radical new ideas about how a nation should be controlled. These ideas rarely supported the idea of a powerful state, let alone occupation by a foreign one. And so, as the unrest increased, the iron fists of the stadtholders and the Dutch military pressed ever harder. So thanks for watching. We'll see if Nassau has bitten off more than he can chew in the next episode of Sinews of War.